We'll begin today's program. Dr. Narendra, Jadhav, Mrs. Vijaya Kulkarni, and I think some more of Professor Vijay Kulkarni's family would be joining us. Some senior colleagues and friends of VGK, a few students, teachers, and I would also like to welcome people who are joining us through video conferencing of the people of the larger TIFR family. So we have people from TIFR Kulaba campus. Thank you for joining us here. It's very nice to have you. We have a group from the National Center for Biological Sciences in Bangalore, NCBS, and we were also to have a group from NCRA, but due to some unfortunate circumstances there, they were not able to join. I'm very happy to be standing here in this auditorium, the Vijay Kulkarni auditorium in fact, to remember VGK as we have been doing every year. This is the 14th VGK Memorial Lecture. Just to recall, VGK as he was known, all of you here have got some write-up about him, but very briefly, he conceived and founded the Homi Bhabha Center for Science Education along with Professor B.M. Udgaonkar and Professor Lagu in 1974. He was first the project leader and then the first director of the center, and his main focus was on education of first generation learners. The center began with various projects both in rural areas in Maharashtra and in urban Maharashtra in the Mumbai municipal schools. And a large number of projects were taken up in the initial years of the center, which led to a building up of experiences on the field, which turned out to be very valuable for the future of the center. He led the center from strength to strength. In 1994, he retired, and but before that, the center had moved from a few classrooms in Nanachok Municipal School to this very well endowed campus here. So that was, I think, his big achievement, which laid the foundation for what was to come later. He passed away, unfortunately, in 2002. And since then, this lecture series has been instituted in his honor. So let me begin first by paying our respects to Professor Vijay Kulkarni, our founder director, and also say that it is doubly an honor for us that Dr. Narendra Jadhav is here And I came to know only recently that he was actually quite very close to both Professor Vijay Kulkarni and B.A. Mudgaonkar, and they used to have a lot of discussions together. Without knowing this and knowing that Dr. Narendra Jadhav was coming, I could imagine VGK just sitting here in this auditorium and thoroughly enjoying the talk. Because he was very interested, particularly in economics, but he was interested in generally everything around, and he was also a very well-read person. Dr. Jadhav is a well-known economist, policymaker, educationist, social scientist, and a best-selling author. Most people, at least in Maharashtra, know him as a best-selling author. He holds a PhD in economics from Indiana University, USA. And currently he is professor and Durgabai Deshmukh Chair in Social Development, Equity and Human Security at the Council for Social Development in New Delhi. He was for a few years Vice Chancellor of the University of Pune, and people in Pune University still remember the new initiatives that he took there. For many years, for more than 3 decades, he was the chief economist of the Reserve Bank of India. He was with the Reserve Bank of India and chief economist for many years. He served as a member of the Planning Commission with responsibilities covering education, labor, employment, skill development, social justice and empowerment. He was a member of the National Advisory Council chaired by Sonia Gandhi. Dr. Jadhav has written or edited 30 books, including 12 books on Dr. Ambedkar, 6 each in English and Marathi, comprising an intellectual biography, 3 volumes of and 3 volumes of speeches, each of 3 volumes, writings, 2 volumes each. He's edited a trilogy on Rabindranath Tagore. And his other books are called Re-Emerging India, Monetary Policy, Financial Stability and Central Banking in India. There is a book on the Untouchables, published by Simon & Schuster, a book called Outcast, a Memoir, which is a sort of free translation of his memoirs in Marathi, which is a highly successful book. And Monetary Economics for India, published by Macmillan. His memoirs called Amsa Baap and Ami, which was published in 1993, and it broke several records. The first edition was sold before publication, which is very rare for a book in Marathi. It has now gone into 185 editions, and about 7 lakh copies of this book have been sold, of which it's been translated into about 20 languages, Indian and other languages. But of these copies sold, 2,75,000 have been sold in, you'll never guess, they have been sold in Korean language. And he is very well known in Korea because of this book, and it's held up as an example. So Amsa Baap and Ami refers to the relationship between him and his father, and how his father was instrumental in, I'm sure many of you here have read the book, was instrumental in his education and his progress afterwards, which is a very inadequate, I think, description, but it will have to do for now. He's authored 30 major official reports, around 200 research papers, delivered numerous lectures. He's recipient of 67 national and international awards for his contribution to the fields of economics, education, literature, culture and social work. They include 4 honorary D.Litt degrees and the title of Commander of the Order of Academic Palms, that's an English translation, of the government of France in 2011. And interestingly, this award was instituted by Napoleon Bonaparte in 1808. And in 1866, it was extended to non-French nationals. And Dr. Jadhav is the first recipient of this commander, which is the highest of these awards. So we are really fortunate to have Dr. Jadhav here, and really looking forward to his lecture. today's program, we will begin with another nice event, which we do every 2 years at the time of the VGK Memorial Lecture. So this is the Homi Bhabha Award in Science Education, which is awarded to a member of the TIFR family for excellent work in science education. And of course, most of this work happens at the Homi Bhabha Center. And this year, that is the 2014 award, is to be awarded to Professor Vijay Singh, who is with us. And the award carries a citation. I think I have to read it off, the citation. So the award, okay, so I will, so we will have the award ceremony and then we will begin with the lecture. So I would first request Dr. Narendra Jadhav to present the Homi Bhabha Award in Science Education. I will just read out the citation.
Sure.
For Professor Vijay Singh, in recognition of his scholarship and extensive contribution to science teaching, for introducing innovative approaches to problem formulation and problem solving, and for steering the Olympiad and National Initiative on Undergraduate Science programs. Professor Vijay Singh has been a long-time colleague, and we're very happy that he has request.
This carries a check of 20,000.
So the award carries a certificate, a citation, and it is of rupees 20,000 given by the TIFR authority. Yeah. So this year we have an honorable mention, and Mr. Anand Khaisas has received this award, but I think Mr. Anand Khaisas is say that Mr. Anand Khaisas, a long-time member at the Homi Bhabha Center for many years. He was a contemporary of V.J. Kulkarni and a very dear colleague. We had many, VGK was his mentor. So it's very appropriate that he's getting the award today. In recognition of his wide range of activities in science communication, astronomy, outreach, material development, and writing introductory science books in Marathi. He himself happens to be a best-selling author for children's books in Marathi. Before beginning the lecture, I would like to request my colleague Professor Subramaniam to present a bouquet to Dr. Jadhav. To Mrs. Vijaya Kulkarni. To Professor Vijay Singh. I'm sure all of you are eager to listen to the talk.
Thank you, Professor Jayashree Ramdas, for a very generous introduction. Professor Jayashree Ramdas, Dean Subramaniam, Srimati Vijaya Kulkarni, and Vijay Kulkarni's several other family members, distinguished invitees, faculty, staff, and students of Homi Bhabha Center for Science Education. Well, friends, it's indeed a great pleasure as well as an honor to be here. And I feel greatly honored to have been invited to deliver this 14th VGK Memorial Lecture. And I'm very happy indeed to come to this august institution. The last time I came here was to meet and interact with Mr. Vijay Kulkarni. I had the privilege of coming here in the early 1990s, and we worked together on Maharashtra Vishwakosh Nirmiti Mandal, and I used to come here quite frequently to meet him and debate with him on various issues. And I remember several occasions when I met him and Professor Udgavkar together, and I continue to carry fond memories of my association with Sri Vijay Kulkarni. What strikes me most is not only his commitment and passion for the work that he was doing, but the values that he cherished. And he had many qualities, and all of you know that. In fact, he began his career in TIFR in the year when I was born, in 1953. But I have known him closely when he was the founder director of this institution. Many of you may not know, but he wrote very well in Marathi, and science education was very close to his heart. And as was mentioned by Jayashree this afternoon, he had a special feeling for the first generation learners. Probably that was another bond between me and Vijay Kulkarni, because I am a first generation learner, and we really struck very positive vibes and chord between us, and we used to debate and discuss all kinds of subjects. And I completely agree with Jayashree that he would have loved to sit here and listen to me and debate and ask questions on what I am going to speak about. He had, in fact, going out of the science education area, because for him there was no limit to the interest, and he was interested in so many different subjects and issues, and he would debate and discuss in a very positive spirit, and he had his own unique sense of humor that I distinctly remember. And Vijayata, he just reminded me that during those days in the early 1990s, he had actually organized my public talk and a debate in Brahman Seva Mandal in Shivaji Park, Dadar or Shivaji Park. Right. And that was, he organized that, and it was a debate on a very sensitive set of issues, and it was a very well conducted debate. And I still am thankful to her for reminding me of that debate. And so one has many fond memories about this great scholar and great teacher, and above all a great human being called Vijay Kulkarni. And therefore I take it as a special privilege that I'm here to talk about a subject that I'm delivering this 14th VGK Memorial Lecture, and I'm going to talk about subject which was very dear in a way to the heart of Vijay Kulkarni. I'm going to talk about the global economic scenario and the future of the Indian economy. Now, one may say that what role science education has, or what role the economics has in science education. Economics is a science, although an imperfect science at that. But I believe that there are two subjects which have transcended all disciplines, and everybody must know minimum of two subjects. One is economics and the second is law, or constitution in particular. And I believe in that everybody, no matter what is your field of work, you must have a basic knowledge of these two subjects, economics as well as law. And I'm doing something about both. You may like to know that 20th of this month, 20th September, I'm going to start playing yet another role. I'm going to be a TV anchorman, and there is going to be a TV show that will start on 20th of September every Sunday morning. This is the TV show on Constitution, and I'm getting the best minds in law together, Supreme Court judges and renowned lawyers and social workers. They have been brought together to educate people, particularly the younger generation, about the Constitution. The title is going to begin in Marathi, and I'm the anchorman of that. I have designed and developed the whole thing. So every Sunday morning it would be there on from September 20th, 10 o'clock in the morning. And it's going to be on 4 channels at the same time. This is again creating a history, because no program has ever crossed two channels. Even Satyameva Jayate was 3 channels. This is going to be telecast in 4 channels at the same time. But that's about the Constitution, about the law. The other subject, which is my bread and butter for a very long time, is economics. And everybody must know, because everything that happens in your life, you don't have to be economist to know the basics of economics, because your life is perpetually being affected, influenced by happenings in the global economy. And of course, it has implications for the Indian economy as well. Therefore, as a part of your general knowledge, you must know what is going on. Now, for example, stock market crash that took place some time back, we saw that. Do you know that in August of 2013, the United States Federal Reserve Bank of the United States, their chief, the chairman of Fed Reserve, as they are called, they called, she, that time it was he, now it is a she, he made an announcement of some kind that we are going to change our policy in certain manner. You know what was the immediate effect? Within 24 hours, stock market in Mumbai had the biggest ever fall, and the rupee shot up to 67.5 rupees per dollar. So even a small statement made by a Federal Reserve chairman affects your life here, and immediately in this integrated world, these things affect everything affects everything else, and therefore you must, so you can't say that, well, this is none of my business, what happens, what the federal chief is saying there, or what's happening in America, how does it matter to me? No, it very much matters to you, because you have investments here, and it's going to take away the value of your investment. So this is not a part of expertise that you need to have, but you must understand what is going on. And you must understand that in a very simple, I'm going to try to tell you this whole story in terms of a very non-technical terms, so that everybody understands. You are very bright people, and I'm sure, but you may or may not have studied economics. I will make sure that everybody understands exactly what is going on in the simplest possible terms. So I'm going to, now the latest, if you see the events, the latest big shock that we had was Chinese devaluation. Devaluation of Chinese currency. It has affected us immediately. Chinese devaluation. Before that, crisis in Greece. Crisis in Greece is such a small country, it should have no significant effect on the world. But there was a major crisis which has shaken the world, and the world has still not recovered from that. You and me, everybody is affected. Everybody around the globe is affected. Before that, there was a European Union crisis. Before that, there was a global meltdown. Before that, there was yet another crisis. So the world economy is passing through a number of metamorphic changes. And I want to tell you the story about all these changes, starting from the end of the Second World War. To understand what is going on now, you must understand how the world economy has evolved over all these years, and along with the evolution of the world economy, how the Indian economy has evolved. So in the context of the evolution of global economy, I am going to track the evolution of the Indian economy, A, and B, what are the current dominant issues in the global economy, and third, how these issues are likely to impact on your and my life tomorrow, and in that sense, what is the future of the Indian economy. That is what I am going to talk about today, broadly speaking. So let us start with the basics. You know, how is the well-being of a nation measured? Well-being of a nation is typically measured imperfectly, but that is the common way, in terms of GDP, the gross domestic product. That is the value addition that all the Indians make will be aggregated, and that is called GDP, the gross domestic product. Gross domestic product is a relatively new concept. You know, it came in the 40s or thereabout. One American scientist, an economist, he thought differently. He said that everybody computes GDP, every country has that, and the numbers come out quarterly basis, in real terms, in nominal terms, and the gross comparisons are made. All that has become a standard part of the conventional wisdom. But he said, he asked a question, what must have been India's GDP 2000 years back? What must have been China's GDP 2000 years back? You know, there was no data, there was no concept of GDP, but he did something very interesting, and he built up. He wrote whatever evidence he could collect, he put it together, and he came out with predictions which will shake you. For example, he estimated that India's share in the global GDP in the year 1, when the Gregorian calendar started and when Jesus Christ was born, just imagine, what was India's share at that time in the global economy? That share was 31.5%. So nearly 1/3 of the global GDP came from India alone. India was a little bigger than what it is now, but what is the share of India in the global GDP today? It is less than 3%. So from 31.5%, although we talk about India becoming an economic superpower, fact of the matter that we were superpower for a very long time. They did not call it superpower, but going by these numbers, we were superpower. In fact, in the first 2 millenniums, from the year 1 to year 1000, first millennium, China and India were the real superpowers, economics, what we call superpower now. 150 years India would be leading, number one, then 100 years China would be leading, then another 75 years India would be leading, and then China would lead. So they were taking turns in remaining as at the helm of the global economy for a very long time, for the entire first millennium. That came down, there are lots of things happened in the interregnum. Let's now jump from there to the Second World War. At the end of the Second World War, you know, the present economic structure of the world that you see around was decided at the end of this Second World War. The year was 1945. The war ended in 1945, but it was almost over in 1944. So in 1944, there was an international conference held in United States in a place called Bretton Woods. And that Bretton Woods, that conference is the most famous or historic conference. It's called Bretton Woods Conference. That Bretton Woods Conference, now India was not an independent country at that time. Nevertheless, India was given a status of an independent member to participate in that. And Dr. C.D. Deshmukh, who became India's first Indian governor of the Reserve Bank of India, much later, he represented India, he led the India's delegation to that conference. That conference decided the future of the world economy. They took many decisions, but some of the most important decisions were they created 3 organizations for all the member countries in the world. One was the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. The second one was World Bank, and the third one was General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, GATT or GATT, which was in 1995 converted into what is called, now called International Trade Organization. That was the first decision. Now what is the difference? A lot of people, IMF and World Bank are on the same street in Washington DC, and they are just across each other, but there is the difference of world. The simplest way to explain the difference between the IMF and the World Bank is that IMF is like intensive care unit, whereas the World Bank is like a gymnasium. So when countries are in trouble, when you have no money left, you have no foreign exchange left, where will you turn to as a country? When you are in that kind of situation, you go to IMF, because IMF will give you assistance for these kind of problems when the country as a whole is in trouble. When there are balance of payments problems, when you have no foreign exchange reserves left, you go to IMF. World Bank, on the other hand, is like a gymnasium. It is a gymnasium in the sense that you go there for long-term health. So you go to World Bank as a country to get loans for a very low interest loan for public sector projects. That is where World Bank comes into the picture. So the difference between the IMF and the World Bank is IMF is like an intensive care unit. You don't go there by choice, but circumstances sometimes force countries to go to IMF. World Bank, on the other hand, is like a gymnasium, and that goes on helping the poorer countries in their developmental efforts. Now, this was one decision made. The second decision that was made was very, very important. That the second decision that was made was that this was not a formal decision, but this was an understanding that who will lead the world, who will lead the world economy, which countries would be the engines of growth for the world economy. And it was decided, it was unwritten law, that three groups of countries will lead the world, will be the engines of growth for the world economy. First would be, of course, United States. Second one would be the Western European countries. And the third one would be Japan. So it was understood that these three countries will lead the world. These three groups of countries will lead the world. And if one of them falters, the remaining two will come forward to take on the mantle of maintaining the momentum of global economy. If two out of three falter, the third one was expected to come forward and take on the mantle of maintaining the momentum of the global economy. And this went on happening almost uninterrupted, in an uninterrupted manner, unabatedly, for as long as 55 years. From 1945 to the year 2000, this went on happening. Minor glitches here and there, but this was generally the rule, which changed in the year 2000. But between these two time periods, between 1945 to 2000, there was a major turning point to the global economy. There were several, but I'm focusing on the main ones. The major turning point for the global economy was 1991. This was also critical year for India, because India also had a major turning point in 1991, but for entirely different reasons. As far as the global economy is concerned, 1990 and 1991 was a watershed year because it changed the pace of change. Now we all know, we have all heard that only thing constant in life is change, and we know all that. But the pace of change really started accelerating after 1990 and 1991. Why did it happen? The pace of change or acceleration of change to pace of change accelerates. So the change that was change is a continuous process. We're talking about second order derivative. Probably you will understand that better.
Yeah, but I don't know what is the variable.
No, the variable is that the change that is taking place in institutional setup, in the growth pattern, in the way people think, the way people work, in every which way. And it happened. Functioning of the global economy. Change in the way of functioning of the global economy. That pace of change accelerated tremendously, and it happened because of two sets of factors. One of them was political, and the second was something close to your heart, technological change. As far as technological change is concerned, that was the time, because of the revolutionary advances in computers, telecommunications, and electronics. Basically because of the technological change, the change that took place then was a turning point. It was revolutionary. Revolutionary advances were made in the technological sense, in computers and electronics and so on. That was one set of factors. The other set of factors was political one. Collapse of Soviet Union as a big power, breaking down of Soviet Union into balkanization of Soviet Union into number of different countries. End of the Cold War between Soviet Union and United States. coming down of the Berlin Wall. These are very, very important, significant factors. So because of the political change that was taking place under the perestroika, etc., in Soviet Union and so on, but a set of political factors and set of technological factors, a combined result of both was that the pace of change accelerated tremendously after 1991. This happened for the global economy as a whole. 1991 was also a year of a major change, a turning point for India as well. But as I said, for a completely different reason. We had one of the biggest economic crises that took place in India in 1991. In fact, our foreign exchange reserves in India, they had dwindled to a level of less than $1 billion. Now, how do we judge the adequacy of foreign exchange reserves? Typically, whether or not your foreign exchange reserves, why do you need foreign exchange reserves? Basically, you need foreign exchange reserves to pay for your imports. It's on payment, and therefore every country has a foreign exchange reserves kept with themselves, and that is typically kept with the Reserve Bank or the central bank of the country. That is why it is called the Reserve Bank of India or the Federal Reserve. They can maintain the reserve. Now, foreign exchange reserves are maintained by them basically to pay for imports. And what had happened was in 1991, over a period of time, our foreign exchange reserves were going down gradually. Then the pace had accelerated because we were exporting much less than what we were importing from other countries. So which meant that the foreign exchange reserve that we had, we were drawing down on our foreign exchange reserve, and a situation came where we had only $1 billion. The adequacy of foreign exchange reserves is typically measured by the number of months of imports it can finance. So the rule of thumb at that time was that every country, particularly a developing country like India, should have foreign exchange reserves which will be able to pay for 3 to 4 months of our import requirement. In 1991, we had a situation where we had foreign exchange reserves which was barely sufficient to cover 15 days of our imports. So we were on a brink of a default. Now, India had had an impeccable track record of honoring all our external obligations. But in 1991, we came perilously close to a default. When you don't have money, you don't have money to pay. Now suppose that all our imports are stopped. What would happen? 76% of our oil is imported. If we stop importing, if we have no money to pay for imports, we can't import oil. Just take an example. If we stop importing oil, what will happen to all the industry? All the industries would have to close down, from footwear to pharmaceuticals. All industries will be closing down. And just imagine the kind of unemployment that would create and the kind of social unrest that would create. So it was really a precipice. We were on the brink of a default. So that was a turning point for us. Now, one thing which is unique, I think, for India is that, and this is great thing about our country, is that when things are normal, we keep fighting with each other. But whenever there is a crisis, we all become one. And when we address that crisis as one people, we convert that crisis into an opportunity. And that is exactly what happened in 1991. There was a change in the government. Dr. Manmohan Singh took over as the finance minister of the new government, and then he unleashed a set of economic reforms which was then called, and even now sometimes people call it, new economic policy. That new economic policy was new to us. It was not new to the world. World had followed that, practiced it, but we call it new economic policy. Another short acronym that is used is LPG. LPG until 1991 was always meant the liquefied petroleum gas, but from 1991 onwards, LPG has now meant liberalization, part privatization, and globalization. So that Tri Sutri, the trinity of principles, doesn't really capture everything that happened. What happened was much going beyond that, but for the sake of abbreviation, we call it LPG, or the liberalization, part privatization, globalization. So we started with that, and then our economy took a very interesting turn after that. So 1991 was a very important turn for both world economy as well as for Indian economy, and for entirely different reasons. Now look at India's economic track record. We became independent in 1947. We started the so-called planned economic development in 1951. What was our rate of economic growth between 1951 to 1985-86? It was only 3.5% per year. In fact, the 3.5%, curiously, until that period, during that period, 1951 to 1986, you take average of 5 years, it comes to 3.5%. You take average of 10 years, it comes to 3.5%. You take 15-year average, it comes to 3.5%. So one of my distinguished predecessors from the Member Planning Commission, then Professor Raj Krishna, called 3.5% as the Hindu rate of growth. It was as if it was written on our forehead that this country is destined to grow only at 3.5%, no more. One particular year we would grow a little bit more than 3.5%, another year we would be less than 3.5%. So 3.5% was kind of attached to us, and it was associated with us. But all that changed from 1991. 1992 to 2002, first 10 years of reform, our average growth rate was 6% per year. So we broke the so-called barrier of 3.5% growth. I still remember the years in 1994-95, the first time we rose more than way above 3.5% by 7%. Everybody thought that was a fluke. The next year we did it again. Then maybe there is something. It had to achieve a hat trick, what in cricket they call hat trick, 3 years in a row of 7% growth. Then people realized that we are not bound to grow by 3.5% alone. We can do better, and we did. So the average growth rate for first 10 years, 1992 to 2002, was 6% per year. In the interregnum, what was the next turning point? After the 1991 turning point, the next turning point was 2001. That is much less well known to common masses, but economists all know that. What happened in that year is that all the so-called engines of growth that I had mentioned, which was the unwritten law that United States, Japan, and the Western Europe will work as the engines of growth, that first time changed, in the sense that Japan has been having all kinds of troubles from 1992 onwards. So Japan has been in trouble. What happened in the year 2001 was that United States, after a prolonged, very strong expansion, the US economy started slowing down. So naturally, going by that unwritten law, everybody expected the third engine of growth, namely the Europe, to come forward and take on the mantle of maintaining the momentum of global economy. And that did not happen. So first time in 55 years, we had a situation where all the engines of growth of the world economy, they started slowing down at the same time. So important was this turning point that we economists gave it a name. We called it synchronized global slowdown. So all the engines of growth slowing down at the same time. There is a corollary to this. When that happened, two countries suddenly catapulted to the global stage. First was China and second was India. And we have, in effect, although the world community does not recognize it, we are the engine of growth, modern new engine of growth for the world economy as a whole. Or until recently China was, it still continues to be, and I'll give you the details of that later. The point is this: China, please understand, China and India, they emerged on the global platform as the engines of growth, new engines of growth, very powerful contributors to the stability of the global economy. The Westerners still do not accept that willingly, that nobody calls us engines of growth, but we are. If you look at the growth rate of China and growth rate of India, and if you deduct that, the rest of the global economy would be in recession. So we have been contributing to the stability of the overall global economy. I'll come back to that point later. Between China and India, please understand something very important, that we started our reforms in 1992 after the crisis of 1991. China started 13 years before us. 13 years before us, and without any crisis. Without any crisis, in 1978 they started taking the measures which were called by India later new economic policy. They started doing the privatization, they started doing the liberalization, they started doing the globalization. In fact, I have to tell you this. Deng Xiaoping was asked one of those days, years, he was asked in a public interview that you are a communist country, he was asked, you are a communist country, then how do you follow these capitalist policies? Because still a lot of people have this completely outdated notion of capitalism versus socialism versus communism and so on. These isms no longer are operating. They operate only in the mindset of the people because they are overly simplistic now. But he was asked that you are a communist country, politically speaking, and why are you doing these capitalistic reforms and these measures? His answer is something very, very important. Everybody who has the leftist leaning must listen to that. And there are a lot of people in the heart of heart, they have this leftist leaning. I also have. But we have to think twice before you see the reality. He said that I don't give a damn. Deng Xiaoping said, I don't give a damn whether the cat is black or white as long as it catches the mice. So whether it is communism or socialism or capitalism, I don't give a damn. Point is that whether we are achieving the results in terms of growth. And please note that China became the first country in the history of humanity to record more than 10% growth for 25 years in a row. No country. It was inconceivable. But China achieved that, and followed by India. I said that between 1992 to 2002, India's growth rate accelerated from 3.5% earlier to 6%. 2002 to 2005, our growth rate accelerated to 8%. And 2005 to 2008, our growth rate accelerated to 9.3% per year. So we were very close to the magical double-digit growth of 10%. That was when Dr. Abdul Kalam started talking about India becoming a superpower, India becoming a developed nation. Because China had achieved that. China was growing at the rate of 11%, and India was growing second. India became the second fastest growing country in the world at that time, 2008, growing at the rate of 9.3% per year. That is when the third turning point came. And the third turning point came from United States of all the countries. Earlier the crisis used to take place in developing countries, but here the crisis took place in United States, and that was called the global meltdown. It started with a simple housing crisis which was called subprime crisis. The financial system in the United States, they gave loans to borrowers who were not worthy of borrowing. So they were subprime. They were not the prime borrowers, they were subprime borrowers. And that's why it is called subprime crisis. And that spread like wildfire. And because of the interconnected world, that spread like wildfire to other parts of the country as well, other parts of the world as well, including India. So everybody was affected. Can you imagine the United States growth rate sunk below zero? It was minus 3.5% growth. It's not growth, it's a negative growth. Minus 3.5%. Western Europe, minus 3.3%. Japan, minus 3%. China, affected from 11%, China came down to 9%. India, and there was a big debate at that time. Some of you who have been watching TV at that time, I was the only one who was saying that India is not anywhere near recession. But a lot of people started saying that we are also going to have a recession. Why were we saying that? That was very unscrupulous of some of our industrialists to say that we are also nearing recession. What is a recession? Recession is if you have negative growth for 3 consecutive calendar quarters. That is the technical definition of recession. We were at 9%. From 9% you can't go to below 0 and stay there for 3 quarters in a row. That was impossible. But while some people were saying that, you know why? The reason was very simple. America came out with a package of $800 billion bailout package. Twice. First $800 billion, then another $800 billion. This was unheard of big package to salvage the financial system. Even the Western Europe came out, 5 top countries of the Western Europe, they come out with a combined package of 1.3 trillion US dollars. Even China came out with a package of $482 billion. So there was feeling or hope by some people that in India also we'll have a package. So some of the industrialists were saying that we are also nearing recession, and they were trying to tell the government that look, elections are around the corner. 2009 elections were around the corner. The elections are around the corner. The recession is coming, and we will have no choice but to retrench our people. So if you don't want, that would be very tough for you for the election. Therefore, you must come out with a package and give us something, you know, to us, like a big package that has come in US and elsewhere. Government, of course, is never that stupid, and government could see through the game, and we did not have any big package, but we had our own measures, and we came out of that very quickly. In fact, those days, there were 3 possibilities were being talked about, whether the recovery of the world economy, whether it will be U-shape or V-shape or W-shape or L-shape. L-shape is the horrible thing that you fall and then stay at the fallen level for a long time. That is the L-shape. U would be the easiest one, where you go down and then take a quick upturn and you achieve a U-turn, so to say. That was predicted that it would happen in about a year or so. The second one was V-shaped recovery. That means you go down very sharply and then also come up very sharply. But it takes about 2 years or little more than 2 years. W means you go up, come down, go up, again come down, and it goes on in the zigzag pattern. These were the examples which were being given. Interestingly, while the United States was coming up very slowly and they were struggling to come above the zero level growth, you know, they were in the negative range, they were struggling. Western Europe was struggling, Japan was struggling. India and China made a quick comeback within 1 year, 1 year and 3 months. From China had gone down from 11% to 9%, China bounced back. India had gone down from 9.3% to 6.9%, we bounced back to 8%. So China and India showed their own resilience to come back. Having made the comeback, we were thinking that we will now go back again to the high growth trajectory. We have shown the resilience. Unfortunately, the 4th turning point came, and that was the European crisis. European crisis hit the world economy in 2011. What is the European crisis? In Europe, 27 countries have formed a kind of one country-like union, which is called European Union. 16 out of them have given up their own currencies and have a common currency called euro. Every member of European Union is not part of the common currency, like Britain. Britain has the pound sterling as a currency. They maintain separate currency. But all others, 16 of them, have forsaken their currency and merged their currency into what is called euro. Now this is a very interesting experiment which is about 50 years old, and it is pan-Europe, one group is to be created, and things have been going well, but it got rudely shaken recently. What happened was, in the European Union, to make the long story short, there are big countries in European Union like France or Germany or UK, and then there are small countries like Denmark and very, very small countries as well. One can say that to a large extent the big countries in the European Union have exploited the small countries in the European Union, although they are part of the same union. So what happened was, 5 countries' situation has been terrible in the last few years, and these countries have been abbreviated as pigs. Portugal, Ireland, Italy, Greece and Spain. These 5 countries where acronym is PIGS, they are doing very badly. Their unemployment rate is very high. The government debt is very, very high. For example, a country like Greece, their total debt is 177% of their national income, of their GDP. That's a terrible amount of debt. So they have been living beyond their means, and others were helping them within European Union, particularly Germany. But now, things have become very difficult. Now what has happened is that the party cannot go on, enjoy making a party on borrowed funds cannot go on forever. So what happened was, Greece, of these countries, these 5 countries are all in serious trouble, but the worst was Greece. What happened in Greece was that IMF has pumped in money. Germany and other members of European Union, they have pumped in large amount of money in Greece as loans. Now what had happened is that Greece was unable to pay back the loans, because if you borrow and use the borrowed money for creation of productive assets, then you have ability to repay your loan. But if you are going to use your borrowing for consumption, there is no way you will generate surplus to pay back the loans. This is how the party just cannot go on. So it became very difficult for Greece to pay back. What happened was that IMF had put all kinds of conditions, and the lender, they have to ensure that the money comes back. Even Germany and other countries, they were also demanding their money. And then there was election in January. What happened in Greece is very, very interesting. In Germany, then when there was in Greece, when there were elections, the results were declared on 25th of January 2015. There was one party which said that we don't like these restrictions that foreigners are putting on us, making appeal to the nationhood and all that. And they said that if we come to power, we will disregard all these restrictions. Who are these people putting restrictions on a sovereign country like Greece? We are not good. When you needed money and you borrowed it and you said yes to everything, and now when the money is to be paid, you are saying that we will not pay, and our self-respect is very important, blah blah blah. And that was the election campaign where this political party, which is a left inclined party, they took a position that if we come to power, they never hoped to come to power. So बोलने में क्या जाता है? They started saying their main election campaign was that if we come to power, all these restrictions will go. We will say go to hell. And strangely enough, that party came to power. Now that became a very, very difficult situation. Now when you are in power, how will you deliver? Because you have to pay. You can't cancel the loans just like that. Can you imagine, they actually took a referendum that whether to go back on our word, and they succeeded. This is not success, of course. The ruling party called the foreign lenders as terrorists. Can you believe that? They called the IMF and other lenders as terrorists officially. Can you imagine? And in the referendum, they won because people said that don't worry about the rest of the world. And then all kinds of things happened. Finally, they patched up a deal. Now, Germany has put in a lot of money there, and they are also, Merkel is responsible to her own population, her own countrymen, and so all kinds of things happened. In fact, Greece went to the extreme. Today, ISIS, there is a big large number of refugees are going out of Syria and Iraq, this ISIS kind of problem, and we have all read the touching story of Ilam, right? But this is going on. Do you know that Greece has actually been encouraging people to take the route of Greece to go to the north part of the other part of the Europe? Nobody wants to go to Greece, but they are giving access and they are threatening others that if you don't solve our problem, give us loan to pay back your loan. Give us more loan to pay back your loan. And that is what willy-nilly the European Union had to do that. The lenders in European Union were forced to give them more loans to pay back. That means only buying more time. It doesn't solve the problem. So all kinds of complicated things happened, and that was the Greece was in big news until 2 months back. The latest one is what is happening to China. China has devalued its currency back to back in 3 days in a row. They devalued their currency, aggregating about 3% devaluation of the currency. What does that mean? What is the devaluation? Let me clarify some of the concepts, and these concepts are, misconceptions are very common in our country and everywhere else in the world. For example, a lot of people think that strong economy means, strong currency means strong economy. Absolute nonsense. Strong currency does not mean strong economy, and a weak currency does not mean weak economy. There is something far more to it. But this is so common. If you remember, some of you might remember, Lal Krishna Advani ji had said once upon a time that if we come to power, rupee would be as strong as Himalaya. And that had a lot of appeal with people, that strong currency means strong economy. When I was teaching in United States while doing my PhD, that time Ronald Reagan was the president, and I was teaching, and I used to tell my American students that my blood would boil if I were an American. Because that was the time when President Reagan used to say that strong dollar is the strong, great American dream and all that. At that time, what happens when your currency is stronger than what it should be? To understand the meaning of devaluation, you must know this. It's like a moving target, and you have to hit the moving target. The target changes at every point of time. Now, if your currency is, when you devalue your currency, what does that mean? When you devalue that currency, that means that if dollar is 50 rupees and rupee is devalued, the dollar would become 60 rupees instead of 50 rupees, because the exchange rate is the price of one currency in terms of another. So when you devalue your currency, that means for every dollar you get more rupees than earlier. What does that mean? That means that the foreign currency price of your exports will go down and domestic currency price of your imports will go up. If foreign currency price of your exports goes down, rest of the world would be buying more from you, so your exports would be more. Whereas the domestic currency price of your import rises, that means people will find it very difficult to buy the imported goods, and therefore the imports would go down. So in one stroke, if you devalue, what is expected to happen is that your exports would go up and your imports would go down, and therefore your balance of payments would be more in balance. That is the basic theoretical position. China did this. Now China's devaluation means what? It means that their exports will rise further. China is one of the largest exporters in the world, but China's growth rate is slowing down. There are all kinds of financial market problems going on. Stock market has been coming down. China's growth rate has been coming down. So there is a perception that China is finally slowing down. In fact, there was an absolutely foolish news item that came in the papers 2 months back, and a lot of people believe that. The headline carried by many, our economic dailies carried the news that India has overtaken China. Absolute nonsense. China growth rate from 11%, it is coming down, and now it has come below 7%. India's growth rate of late is rising, and we have crossed 7%. So their growth rate is coming down, our growth rate is going up, and we have crossed each other at 7% level or thereabout. That is good, but not good enough. This doesn't mean we have overtaken. It only means that for this particular year, India's growth rate is higher than the growth rate of China, which is welcome and nice. But that doesn't mean India has overtaken. Because until 1990, India and China were at the same level of economic growth and development. And today, China's per capita income is 5 times the per capita income of India. So they have increased by leaps and bounds, and they are way ahead of us. So crossing their growth rate for one particular year does not mean India overcoming China. I wish it had, but we have a long way to go. It only means that India's growth rate for this particular year is going to exceed a little bit more than China's growth rate, which is welcome. Good, but not good enough. Let's be realistic that we have still a very long way to go to overcome China. That may or may not happen, but we hope that it happens in distant future. We are nowhere near that, and I want you to understand that. So what has happened now is that China devaluing its currency, China's growth rate is slipping, financial stock market is collapsing, and it has immediate impact on us. What is happening there is this, that Chinese Premier Mr. Jinping felt that he has to keep this notion of China's strong growth, that notion has to be maintained. And he believed, and he has said that several times, that one of the most strongest indicators, the stock market should be continuously, it must keep going. So he did everything possible to create an environment where the stock market would keep on growing. People sold their houses or used houses as collateral to put investment, to make investment into stock market. That is the last thing that you should be doing. But when the market is going up and up and up, those who are not benefiting felt that they are losing out. And therefore, by hook and crook, people tried to put their money into stock market. Now that worked very well for quite some time, but finally all parties come to an end. When the growth rate started slowing down, there was an apprehension. And then that is fed by, stock markets are fed by a very large amount of foreign direct investment, particularly the portfolio investment that is coming into the country. And they started withdrawing. So that accelerated the fall of the Chinese stock market. So devaluation is one way that they have thought about. It took everybody by surprise. And as you are aware, the Indian stock market crashed, worldwide the stock markets crashed, and dollar right now, rupee dollar rate has again gone to a very high of close to 67 rupees. Now this is very high. Why is that happening? See, Chinese devaluation is one thing, but at the same time, what is important is what is happening in United States. United States has a policy, a monetary policy, which is called quantitative easing. What US did was, to bring the economy out of the recession, minus 3.5% growth in 2008 that I was talking about. What United States did was to come out with a very unconventional monetary policy, and they announced that every month on a specific day, the Federal Reserve will buy the American securities from the market, which means that they will be pumping in large amount of dollars in the domestic economy. Very large amount. So buying the government securities and pumping the dollar cash into the economy. That is what was called quantitative easing. And there were three phases of quantitative easing: QE1, QE2 and QE3. In August 2013, the reference that I made earlier in my speech, the Federal Reserve Chief said that we are going to stop our quantitative easing, we are going to taper it off. So rather than buying X billion dollars of securities and pumping that much amount of dollars, we will reduce the amount. Only that statement triggered a crisis in India and everywhere else. Because, you know why? You know why? Please understand this. This is very, very interesting. It's like a thriller. Americans, the growth rate was very down. They wanted to keep their interest rates as low as possible so that investment would be promoted and the growth will pick up. To keep the interest rate down, the best way is to pump the money into the economy. That is the expansionary monetary policy that they followed. By pumping in very large amount of dollars, they were keeping the interest rate down. In fact, the American interest rates were below, close to 0%. So what will happen if you are an American with a lot of money? You are keeping money in the banks in America would give you 0.5% of interest rate. So what would you do? And if you have large amount of money, and there are lots of people and institutions with very large amount of money, what would they do? They would look for better returns elsewhere in the world. So large amount of money went to China, large amount of money came to India. Why was Indian stock market booming when the growth rate was not picking up? It was entirely because of $47 billion. $47 billion came from portfolio investment into the Indian stock market. Double that amount was given to the Chinese market. Now, when in 2013 August they made a statement that we are going to taper off, immediately there was a reaction. Then they backtracked and they said no, we'll not do it now. Why are they talking about it now? They are talking about it now because US economic growth is now taking place. So from the minus 3.5%, they have come above zero and they are doing reasonably well, 2%, 2.5% growth. So the money, so with the growth picking up, the Federal Reserve does not any longer need to keep the interest rates very low. So that's why they don't need to go on pushing the dollar balances into the economy. So that is why they have announced that we are going to stop now. This quantitative easing will be stopped because we do not any longer need very low interest rate. The moment they have said that, and the announcement has been made from 1st September, it is supposed to happen. Anytime it can happen now. That is why the stock market crashed last week. And there have been so many other effects. Now what has happened is that the US economy, now that it is doing well, the quantitative easing has been stopped or discontinued, and what they are saying is that we will discontinue quantitative easing. Having said that, that means that the interest rates would go up in United States. If interest rates in United States are going up, those people with lot of dollar balances who have kept money in China and in India, that money is all going back. Part of that is going back. Where is the need to send the money elsewhere? If you are getting it at home, the rate of return, which is good enough, then why should we take a risk of sending it elsewhere? I'm making it very simple. There are many shades of complications here. But essentially, there is a fear that large amount of money will go back. What has come into India and China as a portfolio investment in the stock market, a sizable part of that is people are afraid that sizable part will go back. What does that mean? If the portfolio investment in the Indian stock market is going to go back, how will it go back? That means that the institutional investors will sell their shares and get the money and take it back, right? So if everybody starts selling the shares that they are investing, what would happen to the stock prices? They are going to crash, and that is what is happening today. So this is the situation where we are. Going to the future, looking into the future, India is the fastest growing country in the world today. We have many problems, but believe me, we are still, in fact, for the first time, earlier we were the second fastest growing country in the world. Now we are the fastest growing country in the world. That is where we are. We have many problems, but going into the future, India is looking at the bright spot. If you look at the world economy, if you look at, as I mentioned before, China and India both have been really the engines of growth in the last few years, although it is not expressly recognized by the authorities that be, or by Americans, or the generally what we call Westerners, although they don't recognize. The fact of the matter is that India and China have been contributing a lot to the global financial stability and the global economic growth. Now, with China slowing down, what will happen in the future? Will China go on slowing down? We don't know. But please understand that the money which, we are very strangely poised right now. Suppose that China continues to drop, its growth rate continues to decline. The largest amount of foreign investment that has been made in the stock market, particularly the portfolio investment, that will go back, right? While going back, if India looks good now, a part of that may actually come back to India. That can automatically stabilize the picture. So a part of money will go back from China, part of money will go back from India, portfolio investment. But because now India is looking much better than China for now, if we have credible reforms in future, right now there are problems and we know that GST reform is held up, land reforms are being held up, and there are many problems. But if we are seen as putting our house in order, our growth rate is very good, and if it is projected to be better, if we are making the efforts to take the right steps in that direction, what may happen fortuitously is not only the money going out of India may slow down, A, and B, money which is going back from China, a part of that may be diverted and may come here, which will become a bonanza for us. So we are at a critical juncture where going from here to the future, I think we have a lot of promise, but we need to put our own house in order and take all the reform measures which are imperatively needed. If we do not do that, then the advantage that we have is going to wither away. Let me only mention one point and conclude. We are enjoying what is called demographic dividend. I'm sure many of you might have heard this expression. It's very important. The average age of India today is about 24, and by 2020, the average age of India would be about 29 years. In 2020, when the average age of India is 29, the average age of China would be 37, average age of United States would be 38, average age of Western Europe would be 43, and average age of Japan would be 48 to 49. So we are today blessed with a large and growing young population. Earlier, population was seen as a big problem, right? We have a population institute right around the corner. Population was considered as a problem. Today, no longer takes it as a problem. It's not the absolute size of population, it is the age composition of the population that really matters. And that is where we are very fortunate, and that is what is called demographic dividend, because having a large and growing young population naturally gives a lot of head start for the country to grow even better. Going by the world history or track record of the Western country. Now we are there, but I have never been tired of saying this, that this demographic dividend is not automatic. Just because we have large and growing young population doesn't mean that we are going to automatically become superpower. It depends on how and whether we harness this demographic dividend. And what is the way to harness this demographic dividend? The only way to harness this demographic dividend is to focus on education and skill development. If we do not do that, mind you, if we do not harness this demographic dividend, the future generations will never forgive us, because we will be creating mouths to feed but not the hands that can work. And if that happens, the demographic dividend that we talk about would actually become a demographic nightmare, because the entire social stability can come down with demographic dividend frittered away and demographic disaster visiting us. And I'm sure the powers that be will take the appropriate steps to harness this demographic dividend in the interest of the country as a whole, because this is a window of opportunity that becomes available to any country for 15 years or so. After 15 years, this opportunity would be gone. This is an opportunity which comes in the lifetime of a nation only once, and we have that opportunity now. If we don't use that, if we don't utilize that, if we do not harness the demographic dividend, I think our future would be, there would be a demographic disaster, and we cannot complain. We will have to blame only ourselves. But I'm sure we will do the right thing at the right time. The way Sri V.G. Kulkarni taught us all by his own action, by his deeds, and therefore while paying the highest tribute to this great scholar and a great personal friend, V.G. Kulkarni, delivering this 14th memorial lecture in his honor is a distinct privilege for me, and I thank the organizers for having given me this opportunity to pay my tribute to Sri V.G. Kulkarni. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jadhav, for very informative as well as a very provocative talk. So I'm sure there are a lot of questions and or comments. If people who are joining by video conferencing would like to ask any questions, I request someone to sort of coordinate that in the groups. So just you can just speak to them. Okay. Questions?
We'll take few questions, ma'am. Typically for memorial lecture there are no Q&A, but I'll take few. No, I will.
VTK would have wanted it.
As a matter of interest, the Sensex, when it crashes very badly and for consecutive 2 days, 3 days, then recovering almost in a similar manner, whether it will have a long-term good effect or only short-term good effect?
No. You see, first of all, please do not take stock market as a barometer of economy's health. It's a very imperfect barometer because, typically the stock market reacts to even rumors, news, leaked news reports, everything, because it's very sensitive. Therefore, it should not be taken as a barometer of the country's economic health. So when it falls very steeply, there is a paper profit blown away, but that there are a lot of people who are waiting in the wings to enter, those who have missed this opportunity. So they get this feeling that now that the market is down, yesterday the market was in the 14 months low, right? It went below 25,000. Now a lot of people think that this is a good opportunity. We have missed out on the bandwagon, so let's join and take the benefit. This is how it works. So there is no one-to-one correspondence between stock market going up and down and the economic strength or growth of the country. Yeah.
Sir, thank you very much.
Yes, Brigadier. We'll give a chance to him and then Brigadier sir.
Is it on? Yes. Is it on?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not a professional economist, but I enjoyed your talk thoroughly. So very nice. I have a couple of questions. One is about the demographic advantage which India has. Nice to have lots of young people, but I think much of it is virtual, the so-called advantage. Only the skillful people amongst these young people are to provide you advantage. A large load of useless people who are young. What is useless old man doesn't hurt. Useless young man hurts. So one is that. So maybe you have some better thinking on that. The other is about the flight of capital from India. If US does that, increases the rate. You see, at the moment, the capital which comes, they get 6%, 7%, 8% from India. And if they take it back, they will get 2%, 2.5%, 3%. They are stupid.
Okay.
This is only in mention. They will not, for a short while, they might take a few $1 billion, but much of it will stay as long as, and India can support that. It is stupid for India to keep that dollar unless we can put it into some assets which allows us to pay back. Otherwise, that could be a sort of a on our neck.
Sure.
Money.
Sure. Thank you, sir. I'll take your second question first. There is a distinction that needs to be made between what is called direct foreign investment and portfolio investment. Direct foreign investment comes into the actual factory, etc. It's the real investment. That doesn't go back immediately. That depends on their perspective, their vision for India's medium-term future. So that is not fickle-minded. We are fickle-minded is likely to be the portfolio investment, जो stocks में डाला है, right? Now there, what you say is correct, that here they can get 6% return and there they are getting only 2% return. So why would they give up 6% return to go for 2%? The reason is, it is not the nominal rate that is to be compared. What we have to do is to risk adjusted rate of return. If they perceive the risk of keeping money here to be higher, then the risk adjusted rate of return will not be 6%. And if they consider domestically zero risk, then the risk adjusted domestic low rate of return would not be as low as what we make it out to be. But that is their individual decision that not you or me can decide. In any case, we have given them freedom to come in, and that is why they can come in. And once you give a freedom to come in, we have to give freedom to go out also. Never mind that. About your first question, I did say that I would not say useless, because nobody in my mind is useless. Everybody has some divine quality in him or her. Everybody. God has not created anybody completely useless. Even old people. Nobody is useless. But your basic point is absolutely correct, sir, that we have to have skilled people. Having more people is no fun. That is why I said that we have to harness this demographic dividend, and the only way we can harness this demographic dividend is by focusing on two things. One is education and second is skill development. Kaushalya Vikas is probably the most important one. Now I'll just give you a number to indicate how far behind we are in skill development. You know, we have missed the bus already. You know, what is the percentage of youth in India which has a formal or informal on-the-job training of sorts, which will be called technical skill training? Less than 10%, formal and informal combined. This proportion in South Korea is 87%. That's the big difference, you know, and we have really a long way to go. So when Prime Minister Modi says that this is a skill India, you know, that is for future. We have recognized it very late, and a lot needs to be done. And I can tell you that in the previous government, I was in charge as a member of Planning Commission of many things, including skill development, and there were very ambitious plans were afloat. I'll just give you a very simple example. In India, can you think about doing a PhD in welding? It's unthinkable. Unthinkable. Because we have a kind of rift in our TVET, technical and vocational education system. We have a kind of dichotomy. From general education, you can't go to this technical education. From technical education, you cannot go to general education. There is no horizontal pathway, nor there is any vertical integration that is possible. That has to change. In fact, what is being created, initiated by Dr. Manmohan Singh earlier, we don't hear about it, but there was a talk that we must have national national skill framework, and I was the chair of the committee, and we prepared the draft about it. And all the skills have been divided from the level 1. 1 is like primary education, to 10, which is like PhD. So for general side as well as for technical education, and there would be in future horizontal pathways, and vertically you can go up. Now if a boy or girl goes to ITI, first of all, good students don't go to ITI, and those who go to ITI, they do a course and that is a terminal one. There is no vertical integration possible. At best there is one advanced course, that is it. They can't come back to the general stream, nor the people in general stream can go there. That will change in future. In fact, as I can see it, 10 years from now, every university will have a skill as a component. And there would be some universities which are skill-based universities only. So that is, recognition is now there, and we are moving in that direction. Although we are late, I am very hopeful for the future. Brigadier is waiting.
Sir, thanks for a wonderful exposition.
Thank you, sir.
Few sort of things as part questions. Firstly, sir, like President Roosevelt, the second one, in the Depression, creating massive public works for absorbing the young people without jobs. I agree, some of them have to have wonderful skills, but some could be used. I mean, you would know much better than me, like the old Kalan Canal for linking Brahmaputra, Kaveri, or the roads and so on and so forth. Second part, sir, the other acronym which is in fashion is BRICS. You didn't give us an idea about Brazil, Russia, the way it is coming up, sir. It can stare down the United States and the Western European countries on Ukraine, and they had to back off. So their rise, and South Africa, if you could just give us some sort of idea.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay. On your first question, you use the word depression. I use the word recession. What is the difference between a recession and a depression? Recession, as I said, is if your GDP falls, goes into negative range below 0% for 3 quarters in a row, that is a recession. We are nowhere near recession. Depression is extreme case of recession where, when was the Great Depression took place? 1931. There hasn't been a depression since 1931. At that time, the growth rate had fallen, the GDP of the world, global economy had fallen by more than 25%. Unemployment was 30% in some places. So this is the Great Depression, 1929, 1930 and 1931. We are not even close to recession. So depression is something which is a nightmarish kind of thing. We are nowhere close to that. We don't have to worry. Even as far as the recession is concerned, we are nowhere near recession and not likely to be. So the question of public work. Now, what you are saying is absolutely true, and that is why Mahatma Gandhi Narendra was started. That is the modern version of public works that you were talking about, where for 100 days you give assured job to people, but it was not only a job creating one. The important thing was to also create rural assets for that, like bunding and a lot of things that can be done in the rural economy. That was not done in a big way, but I can assure you, Mahatma Gandhi Narendra is a modern version of the public work that you are talking about, and that's a unique thing in the world. There are many problems with that, but essentially the scheme is very, very good and very, very useful. About BRICS, although I did say that I did not utter the word BRICS, but I did say that India and China are not recognized formally as the engines of growth like the other countries were doing. See, there is a group of countries which are coming up. These are called emerging market economies, EMEs, and there are many of them. These are the emerging market economies are the countries which were developing countries. Developing countries is a very large group. Among them, there are some which have shown a lot of dynamism. They are not industrial economies as yet. They are not advanced countries as yet, but they are class apart from the other developing countries, which are slow growing and poverty and all kinds of problems continue to be there. Among these countries, these are countries which are called emerging market economies. Among the emerging market economies, there are some which are considered systemically important emerging market economy. What is systemically important? See, what happens in Timbuktu will not affect the rest of the world, but what happens in India is going to affect the rest of the world. So we are systemically more important than others, in the sense that whatever happens in our country has a larger or noticeable effect on the rest of the world. Now, among them, among the emerging market economies, 20 of them have formed a group. They are not all emerging market economies. Earlier, the industrial countries had a group of 7. 7 top industrial countries were part of it. So now it became G8, G7, that earlier it was G5. Really there is only G1, and that is United States. Okay, then there was the G5, then it became G6, then it became G7, then it became G8, and today it is G20. So along with the advanced countries, many countries like BRICS countries have joined them. It has Mexico and other countries too. But the word BRICS refers to Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. These are considered to be systemically most important emerging market economies. So they are participating in the G20 deliberations, and at the same time they have a group of their own. Now they have a bank of their own, which is going to be headquartered in China, as you are aware. So BRICS Bank is coming up. So BRICS is an informal group of these countries, 5 countries, which have joined hands, and they are working out some collaborative arrangement. Okay? All right. There was a question here. Yeah.
As you like it.
Sure.
One more question.
Yeah, sure. No question from a lady student or faculty members. I don't like that. Okay. Yours will be the last question. So this one question and then that would be the last.
As you said that for getting that demographic dividend,
Sir.
education and that skill development.
Absolutely.
But what is happening, because I am in the education field as a principal,
Okay.
what is there in other countries, children they are selecting their own field of study.
Okay.
What exactly happening, he is going to the, where that this course, that course. Here we are not allowing that. That is the one is. And second thing is, what do you think about that present day scenario which is moving skill development? How many years it will take our country to move ahead? This is that gap, what you said is rightly, we are already in late. How far? It means what best we can do for our children at the age group, younger generation, to move that pace.
Okay. First of all, yeah, there are 2 parts of your question. The first part of your question is about the freedom of choice. You know, we still have this completely obsolete and archaic distinction between arts, science and commerce. Nowhere in the world this kind of stupid system still exists. And as the Vice Chancellor of Pune University, I did my best to break this down, but with limited success. It is going to going to go away. It will happen, but it's happening very slowly. I spent 9 years in the United States, and I can tell you that I'm very impressed by their system, in the sense that nobody knows their major when they go to the college, and they keep changing their major. And you take subjects from art history to electronics, you go on trying. Finally, you arrive at some subject which has a great appeal to you, and then you zero in on that subject. But this, in our distinction, if you go to the arts, you are stuck there. Suppose that you go to arts and you don't like it, you have to come back and start all over again. Why? There is no horizontal pathway. Why? But now we are moving toward the credit system and semester system, where, you know, one of the nice rules that I made as a person in charge of education is that, you know, I don't want to give long answers, but I want you to know that, you know, there is a kind of caste system in our educational institutions, universities. There are central universities which are very few. They have no budget constraint. They can get any amount of money. And they are catering to very small. You know, we only talk about IITs and IIMs. Nonsense. You know, what is the mainstay of our higher education? State universities. And they are the ones which are worst affected. Because there the central government doesn't give them money, because they are state universities, and state governments raise their hands and say, we don't have money to give. So as a result, they are falling between the stool. They are the ones which are suffering. Our quality of our education is hampered because 91% of students go to state universities which are completely devoid of the funding sources that can come from either state government or central government. So with lot of infighting, lot of effort, I put together a scheme which is called RUSA. RUSA is the Rashtriya Uchchatar Shiksha Abhiyan. Rashtriya Uchchatar Shiksha Abhiyan, which is like education for all, like Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan for school level. This is Uchchatar Shiksha Abhiyan, under which 95,000 crores were supposed to be given to the state universities, because nobody talks about state universities. When we talk about higher education, we will talk about IITs and IIMs. No, that is not it. How many students they are catering to as compared to the total? Very small. 91% go to the state universities, which are in the worst possible affected. So 95,000 crore rupees are supposed to be going to them over a period of 5 years. Regrettably, after the change of government, I don't hear much. I have not seen the education minister even utter the word RUSA. But I am told that it is still functioning. I don't know how effectively. That remains to be seen. But that is the way to go, and we need to do that. Now, one of the things that has been done very cleverly there is that this money is not going to be distributed to various state universities. We have linked it up with their ability to do the academic reforms. So those universities which are willing to do the academic reforms would be given more funding. Those who are not willing to go for reforms, hum nahi sudhrenge. If that is the attitude of some state universities, they will not get any funding. So by tying up this with the academic reforms, and what is the most important academic reform that we have suggested? That introduction of the credit system and the flexibility of the choice. And this gradually, this distinction between art, science and commerce must be gone. And that is what we were trying in the previous government. Now, what stance this government takes, it's not very clear to me as yet, but I hope they will continue to move in that same direction. The other recommendation of RUSA was also to have the Council for Higher Education for every state. That they have already established. Most states have established for skill development. Every state must have skill development. That was recommended then, implemented. I personally went to all the states in our country and made sure that in every state they have a skill development authority. Every union territory has its own skill development authority. So that has been created. Let us see how those reforms are taken forward. But the more delay that we make, the lesser would be the benefits that would accrue to us, all of us as the Indian citizens. And we should be mindful of that. Final question from that young lady there.
Good evening, sir. So, as you spoke about the education system,
Yeah.
But there's a lot of unemployment in the country which leads to poverty basically.
Right.
So, what do you think which provision should be amended for eradicating poverty and unemployment from the country?
There is no shortcut solution to creating, to removal of poverty and creating employment. Today the situation is this. Take the case of engineering. In engineering, do you know that survey after survey have shown that between 40 to 70% of people who have engineering degree are completely useless for the job. So what has happened is that what has happened in India is that there are people who have certificates but no skills, and there are people who have skills but they don't have certificates. This is a very big problem. We have, now today, if you see this year, the situation is, in many engineering colleges, there are 80,000 seats are lying vacant because people have become conscious. They realize that quality is very important. Earlier, getting admission to engineering college was impossible. Now it is possible, but then the quality is indifferent. You can't be indifferent to the quality, and therefore smaller colleges, which have come up, by politicians, etc. They are not doing well at all, and there are many seats which are vacant. Earlier, people used to pay extra money to get in there. So we have to have the education system which is conducive to creating jobs, which will be the jobs needed for the future. So we have to align these two things together. If it is not aligned, this is not to say that pure sciences have no role to play. They are in their own way very, very important. But generally speaking, these two things must go hand in glove, and it can happen. Unemployment, today the unemployment in India, the numbers are very, very, there are all kinds of data problems about it, but without going through all that, let me only say that youth unemployment is the highest. We're talking about demographic dividend, and we're talking about youth unemployment being highest because they don't have the skills, or they don't have the skills which are required on the shop floor. Typically, every company, I'll give you an example of Apprenticeship Act. This is a classic example. Do you know we had an Apprenticeship Act which was amended recently, and again I chaired that committee which did that. Now, in the Apprenticeship Act, Can you imagine there is a provision that if an employer does not recruit X number of apprentices, he or she can go to jail? There is a provision like that, 1961 Act. The government was saying that the industry doesn't come forward and does not take enough people, and government is saying that industries are not taking these people, and industry has been saying that the rules are so draconian that we don't want to touch it, we don't want to get involved in that. We have until last year, we had one of the lowest level of apprentices when there is so much scope for apprentices. So this has been changed now, that act has been amended, it has become more amenable, and while doing that, very funny thing happened. It was amended, made very practical, proactive and all that. Somebody played a trick, and when the final proposal came to Planning Commission, after going through many rounds, my report was discussed, debated and all that, and final recommendation, some bureaucrat, and I don't mind sharing, the labor secretary then put a small rider there that any company which is taking 100 apprentices, they must give 50% of them a regular job. Now this is a 100% guarantee of the failure of the scheme. No employer would like to have this compulsion of hiring 50% of the apprentice. It has to go both ways. This kind of compulsion, because of that, there were all kinds of problems were created, and then finally the new government has amended that, and the new act, I hope, will really take off. So employment or poverty is something which cannot be removed by a magic wand. What we need is very specific efforts which are taking a holistic view, taking into account the social realities of this country. If we don't do that, I think the situation will go from bad to worse. I'll give you another simple example, and I tried that in Pune University and it worked very well. Take the case of the soft skills. Do you know that in our country, we don't pay any attention to soft skills at all? How many doctors have you seen talk without using the acronyms or without using the jargon? How many lawyers can tell you exactly what is wrong with you? Lawyers have their own angle, but professionals, we don't teach the communication strategy at all. Communication must become part of every subject, no matter how great you are in technical terms. But if you can't relate to ordinary people, your knowledge is useless. You have to be able to communicate. And that, I started something called soft skill program in Pune University, and it became enormously successful. What I did was, I said three things are very important. Students are coming from all over, poor category, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, first generation learners and so on. Some of them are extraordinarily bright people. They have great knowledge. They just don't have the polish. They don't have the finesse. On the other hand, a upper middle class, so-called higher caste person from Mumbai or Pune, he looks very smart, and he knows all the manners, he knows how to dress up. And in a 10-minute or 5-minute interview at the entry point, he or she always makes it. And these people, in spite of better knowledge, they don't know how to dress up, they don't know how to enter, they don't know how to address the question. This is a reality. I started conducting programs for them, and we in university invested a lot in that, and I tell you, the effect was enormous. Their success rate became 10 times more than what it was earlier. So it can happen. They have all the potential. I can tell you one final thing, that Indians really are, I'm not saying this to please anybody here, but I assure you that Indians are obviously the smartest people on this earth. Among all the countries, I have stayed in the United States, and I can give you a couple of examples. The average level of intelligence in the United States is extraordinarily poor. They have extremely intelligent people, mostly those who have come from elsewhere, but general American population. When I was teaching, this is a science education crowd, I was teaching finite mathematics to begin with, and one of the students who was sitting with me, I was telling her that if you take a logarithm of a number and take anti-log of that number, you go back to the original number. She looked at me and said, "Gosh, you are such a genius." Anybody in the 7th standard knows that this is what will happen in India, the rural part. But they think that this is genius. Take the case of, multitasking is a word that you know. Multitasking, do you know that nobody in the world can do as good multitasking as we do? Nobody. Nobody does. And you know, in America, I landed myself in trouble when I said that the only multitasking that an average American can do is to read a magazine while sitting on the potty. That is the height of multitasking that Americans can do. On the other hand, look at our country. Go to a small place, you know, fifth standard fail. Dukan wala hota hai. You know, he is doing 7 things at the same time. You know, he is पूड़ी बांध के देता है, इसको प्राइस बोलता है, उसको ये बोलता है, उधर वो उस पर वो टेलीफोन पर कोई मार के वो पैसा तो नहीं निकाल रहा है, वो बीच बीच में अंदर देख के वो बीवी को बोलते हैं वो बच्चा रो रहा है उसको देखो. He can do that very easily. It has nothing to do with education. This is the multitasking. I'll just give you one final example here. Do you know there is a word called in Sanskrit Ashtavadhani. Ashtavadhani means a person who can look at or attend to 8 things at the same time. Ashtapailu is different. Ashtapailu is versatile. Versatile means doing different things at different times of time, different points of time. Whereas Ashtavadhani means a person who is looking at 8 things at the same time. Please show me this word in any language of any country in the world. You will find that there is none. It is there only in Indian language, because multitasking is something that comes very naturally to us. So we have the great potential. We have the great potential, but we need to harness that for the best benefit of the individuals and for the country as a whole. And I hope we will do that. I thank you all for very good questions. Thank you very much.
So let me thank Dr. Narendra Jadhav once again for a wonderful talk and leaving us on a very optimistic note.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And let's give him a round of applause. Dr. Subramanian will now propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Jadhav, for a scintillating talk. I think we've enjoyed it enormously, and I'm sure that his energy and enthusiasm will rub off on us, and so that's more than just the content of the talk. So thank you very much, and thank you especially for making arrangements to come despite the unexpected troubles that you had. I would also like to thank the members of the family of Sri Vijay Kulkarni who graced this occasion. It's wonderful for us that you come and support us in this activity every year, and your being here is a source of inspiration for us and helps us to be in touch with the message and vision of the founder of this institute. So thank you very much to all the members who have come. I also thank the friends and colleagues of Sri Vijay Kulkarni who have come, and they come I think every year. And again, it's a great source of inspiration for us. Thank you very much. This function and this occasion is doubly graced by the Homi Bhabha Award ceremony, and I thank them for gracing the occasion with their presence. The 2 awardees, Professor Vijay Singh and Sri Anand Besas. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank my colleagues who helped in organizing this lecture, making initial contact with Dr. Jadhav, Sri Sonavne, Dr. Suchunawala and others, and the director who supported this whole activity enthusiastically and who made this lecture possible. I'd also like to thank the technical support staff who made all these wonderful arrangements for several kinds of broadcast. I think many people are getting the benefit of this lecture and over the internet as well as over the video conferencing facility. And I thank them for the support. I thank the colleagues from HBCSE, friends who have come, other guests who have attended, and also many of the people who are not present here but who are part of the audience. And I thank all of them from other centers of TIFR who also gathered to hear Dr. Jadhav's lecture. So thank you. Now I invite all of you to climb up the stairs and join us for a high tea outside.
have people coming over. Yeah.
So you like to talk to you sometimes. Make it. What is your view on the survival of e-commerce in India or anywhere?
I'll come back again and give you a long talk on that also. He used to come with Vijay to my house.